2009, I am interviewing Dominick Notarangelo at Ball State University about his experiences in the military during the Vietnam War era. Nick, what unit did you serve with in Vietnam?
I was in the 4th Infantry Division.
What other units did you eventually serve in?
I finished up in the 130th General Hospital in Nuremberg, Germany.
Can you just tell us a little bit about your early life, where you were born, where you went to school, etc.?
I was born in Newport, Rhode Island. I moved to Indiana in my second year of school when I was 8. Went to Marion Bennett High School, small parochial school in Marion, Indiana, and left high school in the 10th grade. When I was 16, I went back. I spent a lot of time between Indiana and Rhode Island because my parents separated and divorced. By the age of 16, I was on my own. I lived with my older brother and friends and things, and I dropped out of high school and worked in a wood shop with some German immigrants, and they ended up losing their business, and I joined the Army.
When did you enter the Army?
Entered the Army in September '67. I had turned 18 in June. I knew they were going to draft me, so I went ahead and found a branch of service that suited me and signed up.
Did you have any family members or friends who served in the military?
No.
What was your earliest Cold War memory?
Oh, I grew up during the era when everybody was getting bomb shelters and afraid of the communists and the Russians and all that. So I think reality really struck me when Kennedy was killed. I mean, that affected a lot of us. That kind of brought realism to life. But
would you have considered yourself a strong believer in the cause of anti-communism at the time?
No. Just as long as they stayed where they were.
Where did you do your training?
I entered the service at Fort Campbell, where I took my basic training. Had a leave. Then got my MOS, which I wanted to be a medic, or in the medical corps. Went to Fort Sam Houston and got my orders for Vietnam, still hoping that I'd be stationed in the hospitals or something somewhere. So I had about 6 to 8 weeks of medical training, and then once they had decided I was going to Vietnam, I had some brief training in emergency medical care, and took a leave and headed over to Vietnam.
Was the training very rigorous, or did it challenge you?
Basic challenged me. Basic training was a challenge. But I was at least average or above, so I felt good about that, being small stature like I am. The medical training was, it was kind of lackadaisical, but I mean, they emphasized the fact that we'd learn most of what we're going to learn on the job. So then, of course, the combat training, they just more or less showed us how to put a bandage on a person, and we were more indoctrinated into or brainwashed, however you want to put it, into fighting the Vietnamese. So.
What is your most vivid memory of training?
My most vivid memory was I had, they called us for a night march. And of course none of us knew we were going on a night march, and I slipped my boots on without any socks, and we went on like a 10-mile march, and I got blisters real bad on my feet. and ended up in the hospital for a few days, right in the middle of basic training. They were bound and determined I was going to finish basic training on time, so I was, during the final testing, physical testing, I was, had feet stomping behind me trying to get me through the obstacle courses quicker and stuff, but basically that, using the word there, basic training was, quite a vivid memory in that aspect of it. I got out of KP though, that was good.
Before you left for Vietnam, what were your, what were your expectations before you left, and were these expectations fulfilled, or was reality much different?
Reality is much different. As for dying in war, I figured, if you're going to go when you're going to go, we were pretty much brainwashed to, going to get those dinks and, save that country. It wasn't like we were defending our country. We were helping them live a better life. That's the way I looked at it.
When did you arrive in country?
I think it was September 68. Or what? No, it was February. Excuse me. It was February. I was there 11 months. I believe it was in February.
Where were you stationed in Vietnam?
When I first arrived, I went to Pleiku, reporting into the 4th Infantry Division. And once I got there, I was then assigned to a unit within the division, which could have been artillery, it could have been a med station. Unfortunately, I ended up in the infantry. So,
what was it like arriving in the middle and right at the end of Tet?
It's very interesting. This was the real shocker. In the base camp, everybody, has got their polished boots and everything's, you think, well, this isn't so bad, other than the shock of the heat and the smell of the, diesel fuel and all that. But they put me on a helicopter and took me to the top of this mountain in the central Highlands and dropped me off. And here were these renegades, American soldiers, suede boots, dirty, crazy guys. This top of this hill had been run over, and so they went and recaptured the hill, and they introduced me as the medic, and I got tested. I had a guy come up and say, I got to go to the rear. That was always, everybody wanted to go to the rear all the time. My finger's broken. And it was a little crooked. He's, showing me his finger. I said, well, yeah, it doesn't look quite, I'm faking it. Like, I don't, I just got out of this little 6-week course. He said, yeah, it looks a little broken. He said, Doc, because my name changed to Doc once I got there. He said, you know how to tell if a finger's broken? Bend it some way it's not supposed to go. If it goes, then it's broken. Or if the bone's sticking out, it's broken. He said, there's nothing wrong with my finger. And I got kind of made fun of a little bit. Then that night, everybody, it's 6 o'clock, we got to go sit on the bunker. They had some bunkers there. Because if we stayed in a hill more than a couple days, we started filling sandbags, and we make houses out of sandbags. You got to go out the bunker. Well, what's going on? Well, it's time for the light show. Well, every night at 6 o'clock, there was some, we were fighting the North Vietnamese. There's some, we'll get some mortars shot at us. And I said, well, shouldn't we be inside the bunker? Well, the deal was they'd go all out and sit on the bunkers and look for the flashes where the mortars were coming from. And we call artillery to that. Well, 5 minutes later, the mortar would be coming from, 100 meters over. And, they'd call the artillery over there. That'd go on for an hour or so. That was the evening entertainment. So that was really interesting. And I guess I became one of them then.
Did you really look up to the veterans who were there when you arrived? I mean, did they show you any tips or?
No.
No. They just.
Everybody, we were a team. You become part of the team right away. They pretty well let you know what your responsibilities were. If you didn't, you know, I mean, you could get in a lot of trouble with the other guys if you didn't do what, you know, you were called on to do. One major violation was sleeping on guard duty. You get hurt real bad. I didn't have to pull guard duty. I always did. I was treated like an officer. And it became my job that I was the one that introduced new guys coming out. That was the beginning of my social work career. Was I'd introduce new guys that got dropped off in that chopper just like I did. Introduce them to everybody and let them know what the rules were.
What was it like working with guys that just arrived, and I mean, in terms of just looking at them and saying, you know, hey, I used to be like him?
I never felt you assimilate so quickly. It's not like that. I never felt like, you know, I was ever a rookie. You're there, and you're immediately into it.
What was your primary area of operation?
We were in the central Highlands. And basically what we did was to, we'd be on top of a hill one day. And these were like 3,000 foot hills, I believe. I'm guessing at that they might have been higher than that. That's not actual elevation because who knows where we started on ground elevation. But we'd be on top of one hill and they'd say, we're going over to that hill tomorrow. So we move to the next hill, and we may be there a day, we may be there a week. If we were there more than a couple of days, they dropped in sandbags, and we'd fill sandbags and start making bunkers. And usually by the time we got a real nice hooch going, they'd have us tear it all down, and we'd move on, because we obviously didn't want to leave anything for the enemy to use. So yeah, we just kind of moved around the Highlands there.
How did it make you feel having to go somewhere and then set up and then have to just leave?
Well, like I said, you know, if we get a good hooch going, and that was kind of like a competition. Each platoon, you know, usually I bunked with somebody else. Because we'd make our initial camp out of 2 ponchos. And I always bunked with the radio man. I liked being around him. He had the maps. I always knew where we were going. I learned to read maps that way. I had good communication that way. I had my choice of whoever I wanted to bunk with. There's a funny story about that. We had an officer come out. Well, our officers changed a lot. They'd come out, give themselves a medal, and then go back. If they were out there a month, they were, you know, that was... You know, that's one thing we really didn't like, was the fact they never stayed very long. If they weren't very good officers, they didn't stay very long at all. But I had an officer come out once, and the officer usually stayed with, our officers usually bunked with one of the guys. And this new officer came out, and he said, well, I want my hooch over there. I said, okay. He said, I'm going to go eat. I said, well, okay. He said, I'm going to go eat with the other officers. I said, fine. I figured they were going to talk their officer stuff. So I built the hooch for us. Nobody else wanted to. We called him the red-headed woodpecker, some young college kid. Probably just out of OCS. And... So I put a hooch together. Nobody wanted to mess with this guy. You know, we all knew what our jobs were. We listened to him when it was pertinent to what we were doing. But he comes back from after having his dinner with his other officers, and he says, well, that's a mighty fine hooch you built me. Where are you going to sleep? I said, no, we're sleeping in here together. He said, oh, no, officer can't sleep with enlisted men. I said, well, okay. And I tore the hooch down. It was all my stuff. I said, I'll just go hooch over with the radio man, and there, I just left that sucker. He was so mad at me, but there's nothing he could do about it. I mean,
did he ever?
he lasted about a week. Somebody would have ended up shooting him. By the time he went out for a crap, there would have, because what we did is at night, most nights, well, not most nights, we always fired out. We had, what did we call that? We're all around the perimeter, it was just open fire. You just, it's just the, because they always knew where we were anyway. The dinks did. Dinks. I guess I can say that, can't I? And that's where you went out to go to the bathroom. And, it's another good reason why you always kept everybody on your side is because, accidents happen. And he would have got shot if he would have stayed. He didn't last very long. He lasted a couple of weeks at the most, I think. I don't even think he lasted a week, the old redhead. We had a couple good officers, though. We get these rangers in once in a while. I recall once where we had a ranger, I was with this ranger. We go out on these 6-man missions at night looking for, dinks. And we spotted some. And he called artillery in on them. They were right by us. I forget this guy's name. I said his name. We always went on first name basis. And I said, you just called our coordinates in for artillery. He said, I know, get down. And I thought, Jesus. He ended up getting wounded real bad. And I was working on him and patching him up. I said, I'm going to give you some morphine. It was leg wounds. And he said, oh, no, save it for the men. I thought, oh, God, this guy. Yeah, I'll be back. As I got a chopper in to get him out of here. I'll be back. This is only the first one. So he was real gung-ho. Most of the officers we had were just ding-a-ling guys.
How did it make you feel to have so many incompetent officers? I mean, did it really make you lose faith in what was going on over there? Or?
No. We knew what we were doing. We always had the same point guy. Because he wanted to be point man. He didn't trust anyone else to do it. We knew he was good at it. I say we always did. I mean, guys rotated out. Someone else would step into that position, but that guy wanted control. Officers, I have some bad feelings about officers. The ones calling the shots weren't out there. I feel like we could have really kicked some butt if they would let us win the war, but they'd always call us off when we were making good progress, it seemed. The guys in the rear and these guys coming in and out were just there for the glory, but they didn't do the shit. They'd sit around and give each other's medals after each little skirmish or whatever. Very seldom did they give the other guys medals. They'd have to give one out tokenly or whatever, but they were there. It's kind of like John Kerry. Excuse me, John Kerry, but he was there just to. And how much time did he serve on his little boat? So that's about the way it is. So my feelings about officers are they weren't. They were doing something else. They were, strategists, I guess. I don't know.
Did you ever have any officers that really came down hard on guys unnecessarily, or?
That wouldn't happen. I don't think so. I never saw that. It was more us getting down on each other than it was, you're screwing up or whatever. More likely, or you need help with something. So. Being a medic, I had it pretty much made, so.
When you were in the field, what exactly did all your duties involve?
Okay, being a combat medic, first off, my main concern was staying alive. I knew that when someone got hit, they were in line of fire. So I tried to think ahead, you know, how am I going to approach this wounded guy? I've had to use, and I regret saying this, but I've had to use bodies as body shields, you know, as cover. My main goal was to stop bleeding in a combat situation. I passed out malaria pills. There were two kinds of malaria pills. I had a daily pill, which was for valsip malaria, and that's what we called the good malaria. Because if you got the valsip, you got to go to the hospital on the beach in the Trang for a week or two, and you recover from it fully. If you get malaria, which was the once-a-week pill, you could damage yourself for the rest of your life, or it could kill you. So I made sure everybody took their weekly pill. I passed out pills every day, but I'd watch them take the weekly pill. I would check their feet during the monsoons, particularly because guys would try anything to get out of the field. They would do anything. If it meant rotting their feet off, they'd do it. So I made them take their boots off every night, and I'd inspect their feet, and hopefully they wouldn't put them back on, so they wouldn't get jungle rot or rotten feet, because that's, once again, is something that can affect you the rest of your life. Salt tablets. As we went through in a column, we were a platoon usually, or we moved as a company. A company is made up of 4 platoons, but our staffing was so low we usually had 3 platoons instead of 4. Each platoon was supposed to have a medic, but we only usually had 2 platoons for the whole company, or 2 medics for the whole company. But basically, when we were walking, or walking through the jungle, I guess, or chopping our way through the jungle, I would hand out salt tablets. Now, what I tried to do is, as a medic, I wanted to look the least like a medic. So I carried most of my medical supplies in my fatigue pants. Carried my morphine always there in my inside pocket, because some of my junkies from New York were always wanting that. But I wore all these bandoliers like a rifleman that would just have bandages in them. So, you know, a bandage was the same size as a clip, an M16 clip. So I had all these bandoliers. I looked just like a rifleman. I had a little tiny red cross on my hat. Most of the time, us guys out in the jungle didn't wear helmets. That was just, they'd send us helmets out, we'd just throw them right down the hill, and nobody would go back after them, and they wouldn't turn everybody around to go back after them. But for a little tiny, I got a little red cross that I got from one of the Red Cross girls I wore on my hat, but I tried to look the least like a medic as I could. Consequently, I traveled real light. I also carried a real small pack. I had a North Vietnamese Army rucksack I carried instead of a regular Army bag. They looked a lot like it was smaller, though. So I tried to look like a rifleman. And in the column, I could walk wherever I wanted to. So if I felt like walking near the machine gun guy one day, I'd walk there. If I felt like walking towards the end, I'd walk back there. But in the meantime, I was also always circling around, passing out salt tablets, or checking on guys, asking if they're okay. And so I traveled pretty light.
Were you a superstitious person? Did you have any good luck charms or anything you carried?
I wore an oxygen tank. I wore a rosary around my neck, but instead of a cross, I had a oxygen tank key on it, which I didn't have any oxygen out there. I don't even know why I did that. But no, I think myself, and I know a lot of my fellow troops out there felt like we were just in a movie. It wasn't even real. It was just waiting for it to be over. So superstitious, no. Not to that, you know, to carrying a rabbit's foot or anything. Well, I don't know. I suppose my little rosary might have been that, but we were kind of a. Have you ever seen the movie Apocalypse Now? We were like that. We were ruthless, terrible people. I hate to say that, but I plead temporary insanity. We were on search and destroy. If we went into some place and nobody knew where those weapons came from, or nobody knew anything, we burnt the place down. We didn't kill anybody. I mean, just outright murder people or rape the women and children like you hear about. We weren't that bad. Once you see one of your friends get killed, you just want to kill everybody that had anything to do with it. It's just the way it was. When we went to the rear for a stand down or something like that, nobody messed with us. We were the guys with the suede boots, dirty, had towels around our necks because of, you know, we got used to wearing towels around our necks or cravats of some sort and boonie hats. We were just a wild bunch.
So, how long would you hump in the boonies for?
Months at a time. We had, in the 11 months I was there, we had, I think, maybe two. I had one R&R when I went to Bangkok. And we had 2 retreats where we went into base camp, which was in Pleiku. No, we had one of those. Then we had a couple that we went into Bami Tuat, which was the battalion base camp. Other than that, we were just out there living. Luxury was, we didn't even like hot food. Whenever they sent us hot food out, we all ended up with the shit, so we ate out of cans before they had these fancy sea rations they have now, but, and screw over the new guys on the food. Because the trick was you get a case of sea rations, and you turn it upside down, everybody picks one. Well, after you're there for a while, you know what corners got the ham and eggs. Nobody wanted that. So all the guys, you know, all us guys have been there for a while. We'd pick out all the good stuff, and the new guys. And then after a while, they learn. Being a medic, speaking of food, being a medic, I always had medical supplies. So if we were out of cigarettes or anything, I could call in medical supplies like that. And I'd always say, well, you know, why don't you throw in an SP pack, which was a big box full of cigarettes and candy and all kinds of neat stuff. And so one of the privileges of being a medic and one of the things that made me invaluable in my job. So.
Did you ever encounter any instances of men shooting themselves in the foot or anything like that to leave?
I believe I did. I had a person who kept saying he was going to do that. When I worked on him, he said, "Isn't that neat how he got right between the toes?" He didn't hurt himself that bad, but he got evac out, and he was getting pretty short anyway. So short meaning he had a little time left. So I think he did that. Guys would do anything to try to get out of there.
What kind of effect did that have on you, just the fact of how desperate some of the men were to leave?
No, he was nuts anyway. He was a New York junkie, so.
What about booby traps? How often?
We were always looking for them. What do they call bungee pit, or what were they? Little bamboo rod. What do you call those things? Yeah, we saw those quite frequently. We were always looking for that stuff.
How often would you encounter that? Was it on a daily basis? Or?
No, not on a daily basis. No. Certain areas, and I tell you what's surprising is they had dropped us off on top of a hill one day by chopper, which they normally didn't do, but they had moved us to this hill, the whole battalion. And no, it was just the company. And they had dropped us on top of a hill that belonged to the North Vietnamese. And we were running our little slurp patrols out of that, short-range patrols, where we go out 5 or 6 guys, and this whole mountain was theirs. And we ended up really getting our butts kicked. And it was just full of tunnels and all kinds of stuff in there. But we lost quite a few guys that day. That's the day I got my Silver Star, while we were there.
Could you describe exactly what you were awarded the Silver Star for?
Well, I believe they gave you a copy of the deal. It sounds a lot better than what actually happened. We got hit. I mean, I was on a slurp patrol going back up to the top of the hill, because when we go to the top of the hill, we set up a camp. Then we'd run our patrols off of the camps. And we were coming back and just walked in while these North Vietnamese were having breakfast, and they kicked our butts. I was the only guy left. Everyone else in my... they sent 2 other squads down to help us when they heard all the racket going on. And before it was over, I was the only one that wasn't dead or wounded. In fact, they sent a whole entire company to bail us out. And most of the guys went back, I don't know where they went somewhere. But they had me stay with the dead. And I got the wounded out right away. Medevac was excellent. I mean, you could get hit by a car out on here on McKinley, and Ball Hospital right over there. I can get you to the hospital faster there than you would from here to there. But anyway, I had to stay with the dead guys, and till this other company showed up. It was overnight, and they walked artillery around me all night to keep the dinks away. And that was my scariest point in the whole deal. Was I was sitting there with these damn dead bodies, pardon the expression, and an artillery round, a short round, hit a tree above me. And this is the truth, I had our shrapnel coming down all around me like a rain, and none of it hit me. Not one scrap of metal hit me. It was just amazing. And I just sat there. I was leaning against a tree. I just sat there. Well, my time's up. I thought it was over. But before I know it, I heard the other Americans coming and saved my butt. I was put in, we were talking about Silver Star, I was put in for a Distinguished Service Cross. Had I been wounded, I probably would have got the Service Cross. They usually, when they put you in for a medal, you usually get 1 step down. Had I been dead, I might have got I don't even want to think about it, but I might have even got a Medal of Honor. I was real busy that day. But to think about what I was doing, I wasn't thinking about what I was doing. I was trying to help people. I was going from one guy to the next, administering what aid I could. My roommate, my hooch mate, the radio man, was blown so bad. I was looking for him afterwards. I couldn't find him anywhere. I had already, tagged him as dead. And when I was writing up the tags, I kept saying, "Where's Stojak? Where's Stojak?" And he was one of the guys I worked on. It was, it's ugly. I mean, I can't really describe, and it's not real. It's like a movie. I had one guy, one of the radio men that had all these flares that hung off his smoke. I don't know what smoke grenades that you use for marking stuff. He had hanging off his radio. I went to him, and he was red and yellow and blue. All this stuff exploded. He was still alive, and he was stabbing his arms into his face, saying he was blind. He was stabbing bones into his face. And he didn't even know his arms were gone because he was blind. And it turned out that guy lived, and they saved his parts of his hands. I don't know how they did it, because when I pulled a bandage out, I thought this isn't going to work, and I cut up a poncho liner, and tourniqueted him up and wrapped this stuff around, this hamburger hanging from his arms. And I got a report several months later that he had, several fingers on one hand they saved and a few on the other. And I can't remember if he was still blind or not, but I was just amazed he lived. But all that was so surreal. It's just like it didn't happen. It's like a movie.
Where exactly did this take place?
That was outside Bamituit, still in the Highlands. We got out of the Highlands a little bit. I think there was some flat land outside of Bamituit that we got into that was a real luxury. It was like, they had pineapple groves and stuff. We ate good, and we weren't climbing up and down mountains. But, it's a jungle. We went through places where we had to just chop our way through with machetes to get. We'd try to follow a ridge line up. We'd have maps and try to follow a ridge line up, but you never know what's growing in there or anything. So it's.
Did you feel like military intelligence had any clue what they were doing? I mean, whenever you would go out on a mission, would they say there's enemy here?
We were telling them, and they didn't listen. I think we could have really kicked some butt if. It seems like when they wouldn't do what we'd asked them to do. They were always off on some other page. We were looking for troop movements. We would report troop movements, but they wouldn't do anything about it. Then they'd end up bombing the hell out of something else where who knows what was there. But and I can't say. I mean, they may have known something else was there, but I feel like they didn't want to win the war. Personally, I think a lot of people made a lot of money selling military equipment. I think it was a big cash cow. And of course, wars today are a lot different. But back then, I mean, we were in a conventional war, and we had the firepower to do a lot of things that we didn't do, like bomb North Vietnam, more than they did. But.
Did you have any contact with the ARVN at all?
What's ARVN?
South Vietnam.
Oh, the Arvins? Those guys were a bunch of dorks. They were like little sissy kind of guys. We had a few advisors that came out, and we'd run into them in base camp and stuff, but we were doing the bulk of the work. They were just, I don't know, they were a bunch of sissies. I'm sure there were some good ones. I shouldn't say that. But.
Was there a feeling of mistrust toward them?
No. I didn't mistrust them. And even the people we met in villages and stuff, I didn't really mistrust. I mean, they're trying to survive.
What about the Montagnards?
Wonderful people. They were real nice. And they mind their own business, and I guess there were a few of them that were scouts and things, but they were stout little Indian kind of people that I really liked them a lot.
Did you do any work with them in terms of combat? I mean,
No.
Did you have any that went out with you to
No.
tell you? Okay.
No. They are not the Montagnards, but the Arvins and even our own Green Berets and stuff. They come out once in a while, but they always went back to base camp. They never really spent any time with us. They always went back to their nice plush digs in the Trang and wherever they came from.
So how did you feel about the troops that were, quote, in the rear with the gear?
Indifferent. They were lucky. They were lucky guys. Guys in Cameron Bay surfing, had their speedboats, and yeah, they were lucky. We were unlucky, but I mean that's the luck of the draw. It's. I'm out there with a bunch of mostly young kids. I mean, we were all real young. Draftees, people off the streets, junkies. Of course, they didn't get any junk out there.
So how big of a problem were the drugs?
No problem. When I was there, I hear after I left, like 69, 70, the heroin thing came in and stuff, but we never had a problem. We had smoked pot out there, but I mean, that was no big thing. Almost everybody did it. We had a job to do. We knew what we were going to do, and there was no place to be, you know, totally wiped out of your mind or anything like that. Because somebody else would have to cover you, and we, you know, it's bad enough as it was.
You mentioned some junkies. They're always trying to get you.
Yeah, I had a couple that would, Doc, give me your morphine. Well, you know, that's a controlled substance, and what if I needed it? You know, I would have been glad to accommodate them if I had an endless supply of it, just shut them up. But then again, you know, they wouldn't have been functional either. But yeah, they wanted my morphine. Hot item.
Since you were in Pleiku, how common were rocket attacks, or just you were mentioning mortar attacks?
We got Pleiku got hit real bad right before I got there, which would have been early '68, and right when I left. I never heard of much happening in between there. Pleiku was not a very nice place to be anyway. I mean, it's not like you were in Saigon or Cam Ranh Bay or something like that. It was a big, dirty military camp in the middle of nowhere. But you know, there's a town there and stuff, but it wasn't that pleasant a place. But we got hit. In fact, just before I got air evac'd out, we got hit real bad that night. But stuff happens, I guess. They threw in some mortars and a few rockets, and that's called getting hit in a big place like that.
So did you receive any other medals or?
Yeah, a bunch. We got some unit and presidential citations. I had a combat medic badge and some other stuff.
Did they meet?
I think my unit got a presidential citation too, which goes with the unit forever. But had all these ribbons I used to wear. After I got back from Nam, though, whenever I had to wear a uniform, I finally ended up in Germany. I only wore my Silver Star. Funny thing about the Silver in my combat medic badge, I found out that all those lifers in there and all those officers really loved that Silver Star. So I could do just about anything I wanted, and they'd say, "Don't think your Silver Star is going to get you out of this." Well, you know, they only had to tell me that a couple times, and I realized I had a free pass. You know, so I only wore that. Yeah, it was kind of neat having that.
What kind of stuff could you get away with?
Anything I wanted. Leave, skip inspections, just about anything. I got busted just before I got out, though, finally, for being in town in Germany in a place that was off limits. But they knocked me down a rank, but other than that, I didn't do any. You know, they had to do something. Because in Germany, I pretty well had a free ride.
I mean, the differences between Vietnam and Germany, for you, what was the biggest black and white difference?
Okay, let me start by getting out of Nam. I got air evac'd out of Nam, and I had an ulcer that burst, and I only had 30 days left, so they sent me to Japan. And I was smoking next to my bed, and they told me I couldn't smoke. Lights were out, and I told them I could do just about anything I damn well pleased because I already fought for my freedom. And so I spent a month in Japan adjusting back to organized society, which means I was on leave in Japan. And of course, my ulcer wasn't really that bad. I mean, I'd spit up some blood, and they took me to the hospital, and that's what... I think it was more or less bad food than it was anything else. When I got back from Japan, Yeah, I got air back to Fort Knox, and I spent 2 months in the hospital there recuperating over the ulcer deal, and got assigned to Fort Knox when I got out of the hospital there. I said, send me anywhere but here. You know, they're going to send me some. Well, they assigned me to Fort Knox, and I ran the immunization clinic there. And that's when I learned about junkies. I had to give shots to everybody coming in the Army, everybody going into basic training at Fort Knox. And I saw a lot of needle marks and stuff from guys coming out of New York and New Jersey and stuff. I thought, Jesus, got these guys in the Army. And I'd have to tell these guys, you know, I'm not looking for tracks. You know, I'd like the TB especially, because we gave it right here, and I'd have to check it a few days later. And I'd tell them, I'm not looking for tracks. I'm just, you know, seeing if you get a reaction there. And I spent the summer at Fort Knox. And my job consisted of giving all these guys shots. Well, I scheduled them. And when I was done with the shots each day, I was off. Well, I'd schedule everybody in the morning. I'd have my work done by 10 o'clock, and I was off. And I spent summer wandering around Kentucky and driving around and having a good time. Finally, they thought that I wasn't a good example for all these new guys coming in. So they sent me to Germany. I went to Nuremberg, Germany. That was the most wonderful place. I was in this little old German hospital in Nuremberg, Germany, downtown Nuremberg, and delivering babies. And I did that for about a month. And after you've seen a couple babies born, that's over. I mean, there's no more excitement in that at all. Part of my job was carrying the placenta down to the lab, and if stillborns, I had to take them down to the lab, which was down a tunnel in the basement. It's kind of weird. But I ended up getting it. They needed someone in the publication room where we had a mimeograph machine and stuff. I ended up cutting everybody's orders. I got a job in there, and my job was to publish the daily hospital newspaper and print everybody's orders, promotional orders, discharge orders, make copies of them and stuff. So that was a real cool job, which I did for a while, and then I quit that job. I just didn't do anything in Germany. I had a maid. It's like I had my own. I had a room in there about the size of this that nobody even knew was in the hospital. It was. I had my own bathroom in there. And it used to be an old officer's room, and it was. I'd take other people's furniture stuff. I was just. Yeah, I was really incorrigible. But I was just riding out my last year, and traveled around Europe a little bit then, and then got discharged and suffered what I called immediate stress syndrome, which is I went back to Europe after a while. After a year, I went back to Europe and kicked around, went to India and lived in India traveled overland, trying to find myself and cool off a little bit. But
how long did you travel like that?
A year. I got out, I started collecting unemployment. I went to Florida right off the bat, stayed down there for a few months. Then I went to work at the Marion VA Hospital, and I was a patient escort. And keep in mind, I'm still a high school dropout. Actually, I got a GED while I was in the Army, which they just gave to me. But I worked in Marion Hospital, VA Hospital, and found out that no one, you know, us escorts had the most contact with these patients. But when it came time for patient, talking about the patient, you know, what do you call that, the briefings or whatever, I didn't get to participate. That was just the people with degrees and stuff. And I thought, well, this is, you know, I don't want to do this the rest of my life, just be a patient escort. And they don't want to hear anything about what I have to say about these guys, so I quit and went to Europe. I was going to hitchhike around the world, which I did. and got all the way around to Thailand and hitchhiked back. Not only hitchhike, I took some trains. I'd get on a train I'd look at the schedule and see how far it went before it stopped. And if it went a real long ways, I'd get on the train without a ticket because they wouldn't kick me off until the next stop. So I had bet a friend that I could go around the world on less than $1,000, and I did. In fact, when I got back to Germany, going overland and back, I still had about $400 or $500 left, and just blew it there in Germany for a month or so, living it up. But then I came back and enrolled at Ball State. It took me right in.
So you said you worked in the Marion VA hospital.
Yes, sir.
Was that an eye-opening experience for you in terms of how veterans are being treated in hospitals back then? Because I know from what I've read about it.
A lot of those guys, that's a nut house. And a lot of those guys were in the service just long enough to get out. They were institutionalized, they were enrolled in the service, and just to get out of the upkeep of keeping them in a mental hospital, civilian mental hospital, got processed into the Army and processed out straight to the VA. The other half of them in there, I'm saying half, it was a retirement home, basically. There were some really crazy people in there. The VA hospital sucks. I'll give you a good example. I'm deaf in one ear. I wear hearing aids. I just got these. I finally decided, okay, I'm going to go to the VA, see if I can get some hearing aids. I go to the Marion VA, all right, file for disability, which I finally got. But here's the story, and this is awful. I have a liver transplant, okay? I was on chemotherapy last year. Liver transplant, chemotherapy. I go to the Marion VA because I'm deaf in one ear. First thing you want to do is draw blood. I said, you can't draw blood out of me. All my veins are collapsed. You just can't do it. When they draw blood out of me, they give me a sonogram at IU Med Center. Well, we're just going to have to disregard your application because you're not cooperating. I said, what's a blood test got to do with a hearing problem? It's part of our procedure. I said, okay, you can have my blood. I came home, they stabbed and jabbed and carried on. Both my arms were just total bruised. I was getting blood transfusions because of my chemotherapy. They called me a week after that and said, oh, by the way, do you know that you need some blood? I said, well, yeah. I said, I just got some. I was getting blood every month. I said, I told you guys not to stab me. Well, that's just part of the procedure. Then I go back, and they're all apologetic. And I go in to report to get my hearing checked, and they said, well, we want to do a lower GI on you. I said, what? He said, we're going to have to give you a barium enema. I said, now wait a minute. You approached my ear from the top, not from my ass. Oh, no, well, we see where you had an ulcer issue at one time when you serviced. I said, I'm not applying for disability for an ulcer. I haven't had an ulcer problem in 30 years. I can't hear. Well, I finally went around and contacted Evan By and Luger and everybody. I finally got taken care of decently, but the VA sucks. They don't have good doctors. Now, I know and the big hospitals where they're treating these guys coming back from Iraq and stuff, they got some good surgeons in there. But these local VA hospitals, they got some bad doctors in there, and they got some funny rules.
How does it make you feel that veterans are being treated that way, especially you? I mean, did it...
No, because I know they're nuts. They're incompetent. So, I mean, you know, I won't go back there unless I absolutely have to. I mean, I knew I was deaf in the ear. I mean, I hated that's been that way forever. I just finally did. I mean, like I said, I got this liver transplant a couple of years ago, so I'm used to. I got used to going. I never went to a doctor before. So I got kind of used to being messed with medically, so I thought I'll get this hearing situation straightened out. And went through the VA to do it, and I'll never go back there. I say that, but as long as Ball State's covering my insurance, I'm not going to go back there. Thank you, Ball State. I'm an expensive employee.
So just to shift a little bit, when you got back to the States, how were you treated as a Vietnam veteran?
That's where we were. I got us off track. I'm sorry. Okay. I don't think people. I was so young. I don't think people knew. I didn't talk about it. I'm not a real social person, so I don't think I dissolved myself from the military whatsoever. But we were talking about how you're treated. I was in Germany, and I would go in to town, and the Germans would just treat you awful. They treat us all awful. I went back there a year later as a civilian, same clothes. Maybe my hair was a little longer, and they treated me entirely different. When I was there, I was occupying. When I was there as a tourist, I was okay. How did they know? I mean, by the look on my face or what? But, I don't think I acted any different because I tried to blend in as much as I could both ways. But being in the military, you are treated differently.
My name is Matt Barnes, and we are going to continue our interview with Dominick Notarangelo. So, just to continue where we left off previously about treatment of veterans, what else would you do?
I can elaborate more on that because, as you know, I'm a former social worker, always will be a social worker. Consider myself a sociologist. I traveled a lot in my youth. I still travel. I've been all over the world, Soviet Union, South America, served in the Peace Corps. And in all those experiences, I found that as long as you wear a smile and try to communicate, people treat you right. Somehow, and I don't know if it was the face I was wearing or what, but as a military man, I just felt like I was being treated different. I'm talking about foreigners. As I said before, when I cut back from service, nobody really even knew I was in the service, so I never really suffered any repercussions. I knew what was going on. You heard on the news about how we were called baby killers and all that, and maybe that's why I avoided it, talking about it or anything. Other than the fact that really, for this hour, I've been talking about my experience in the military, but I usually don't even talk about it. And I don't watch military movies. I don't like them. I never have, and I've seen parts of MASH, but never, and that's a low-key one, but I just...
What don't you like about the military films? Did you feel
just, I don't like to think about what I went through. I like to think of it as a bad dream, and I plead temporary insanity because I feel like I was brainwashed. And I think that's part of what's wrong with the guys going to Iraq and Afghanistan right now is they're being, sucked out of their civilian life real quick because they're weekend warriors and they're not indoctrinated. I know they're going through a little indoctrination, but I feel like we were just, really brainwashed. And that's how, I just don't like to talk about it. It's just a bad dream to me. So, although I like to say that I grew up in Vietnam. I mean, I was an 18-year-old punk kid when I went there, not knowing what I wanted to do, and at least when I got out, I had some direction.
When you were still over there and like during 1968, a lot of craziness was going on with Bobby Kennedy getting assassinated and MLK getting assassinated, and Ted happening, and
I got there right after Ted.
But how did all those events, going on while you're over there? How did that make you feel?
We weren't aware of all that. I mean, we might have been aware of it, heard this brief news thing or that brief news thing. Our news was filtered through, what we call that Army newspaper, the Stars and Stripes, which of course was, I'm sure, censored. That's another feeling I have about the guys now. These guys over in Iraq and Afghanistan are calling home every day. They got the internet. I mean, they're not out of touch at all. We were out of touch. I mean, a letter from home was, really important, but I mean, you heard what your family had to tell you, and it's not like we didn't have the communication that we have now. So you hear those things and you think they think they got problems. Look at me.
Did you enjoy reading letters when you were?
I didn't get that many letters. No.
Did that have an effect on you? Did you didn't get many letters,
No.
Or did you prefer it that way?
I was indifferent. I've been a loner. Really didn't have much of a family, and so I was in my own little world.
The anti-war protests, did they have an effect on you? I mean, did they make you angry, or?
No. I was more, you mean afterwards? I think most of that stuff was pretty well calmed down by the time I got out of the service, because I didn't get out till 70.
Yeah.
So, and of course I was in Germany, so I didn't experience this home front thing.
How did the anti-war protesters make you feel when you were still in Vietnam?
I wasn't that aware of it. And everybody's entitled to their own opinion, so yeah, they were just doing something.
So after leaving the service, and after you've done your travels, and you said you went to the Soviet Union, could you explain a little bit about that?
I've had a lot of great experiences. I just had the travel bug. I worked in state welfare for 22 years. And during that time, I had the opportunity to go on a rotary exchange, professional exchange to South America, representing my profession. I went down with a doctor and a lawyer and an architect and a mayor and a few other people. And of course, the Rotary Club, that's all red carpet treatment. That was really nice. Cultural exchange thing. I was in the Peace Corps. I took a couple of years off of my work with the state and went down to Guatemala, taught construction. Most of my trips are on my own. Like I said, I've been to Europe so many times I can't count them. Soviet Union, I went there before the breakup, which was we had to be escorted, which wasn't much fun. I was with a group, and I really don't like being in groups. You always got that guy that's slowing everybody else down and late and this, that, and the other, but that was a very nice experience. Of late, over the last 3 years since I've had the transplant, I've been going to Mexico. In fact, I was just down there last month. I go down there a couple times a year. I'll start going further overseas again, but the wife didn't want me to go too far away from the hospital while I've been recovering. So I'd like to get down, do some more down in Central America and stuff. I'll never stop traveling. I like different cultures, and I like seeing how other people live and messing around with them. I just have a good time.
What's your favorite culture that you've encountered?
Well, being Italian, I have to say my favorite place is Florence, Italy. The most fascinating place I've been, Well, I have to say two. Of course, I went to Kathmandu in Nepal, and India is a fascinating place. Stand-alone place is Machu Picchu, Peru. I mean, it's just incredible. You don't know how it's done, how it was done. It makes me believe in UFOs or alien species, because it's just totally remarkable. It's just unbelievable. But yeah, I'll find new places to go. But I'd say Florence, Italy, and the country of Italy is my favorite place, because the food's great and the people are nice, and it's a pretty country.
So, after you rotated back to the world, what kind of difficulties did you have adjusting to just normal civilian life again?
I had an attitude, and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I went to Florida, had some part-time jobs down there. I knew I had to get some kind of credential, or I didn't go to college to make a lot of money. I wasn't looking for a career to make a lot of money, because I've been poor all my life. I wanted to help people. I learned how to help people in Vietnam. I enjoy helping people, but I also knew that in order to have anybody listen to me or to have any clout at all, I had to get a degree. So after kicking around for almost 2 years, I enrolled in school. So I'm glad I did.
And then what did you do after you got done with school?
Went to work for the state. Worked in public welfare for 22 years.
Looking back on your time in Vietnam, if you had a choice to go through it all again, would you?
Oh, hell no. Not knowing what I know now. At the time, I felt really patriotic, but war's not good. People die, innocent people die. And it's not. It's dog eat dog.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that, or something that I've missed that you would like to elaborate on?
I don't think so. I think you got me to talk more than I ever expected you would, actually. No, I'm glad this is over. I'm glad I was able to help you out. I hope I did, and help history, but I'll go back to not talking about it. And not sit with my back to a door, because that's one of the handicaps I have from my experience in the war. Is in the restaurants, I have to always be watching the door. But there's a lot of us like that.
On behalf of myself and Ball State University, we would like to thank you very much for coming here today. This is a huge help for this project, and what you've done is going to be invaluable to the historic record. And thank you for your service to this country.
Well, I appreciate that.
Greatly appreciate it. Just thanks again for coming here today. This has been an honor.
Just wish I could have won the war, but we never did. Came out a loser. Second place. That's what I say. Vietnam, second place. Or Southeast Asian War Games, second place.